Welcome to the platform where the stories weigh a ton. This is where some of the MHSPLA's best tell real stories about what it takes to build themselves and their teams under the bar. I'm your co-host, Chris Whitaker. We're glad you're here. Hey, if you're enjoying this show, please make sure you subscribe, follow, and leave a review on all major podcast hosts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon Music, and much more. That support helps us to continue to grow the show and bring the conversations that you want to hear right here on the platform. If you'd like to give us feedback or suggest a guest or topic for the show, please email info@mhspla.com and we'll get back to you. Today's episode is episode number 13. It's featuring part one of our conversation with powerlifter and longtime MHSPLA figure, Denny Reinhart. Denny's state record holder in his own right, setting a USPA bench press record in his weight class and age group a few years back, and he's been around since the earliest days of the MHSPLA. In part one, Denny talks us through his journey through football and powerlifting and what it took to help build a program from scratch, and all the coaches and lifters who helped shape them along the way. We get into his philosophy on diagnosing a lifter's weaknesses, why he preaches consistency over genetics and patience over speed, and some of the stories that stick with him most, from the program's toughest meets and to the legends of Montrose powerlifting. Stick around for part two because that drops Thursday this week, and Denny's got plenty more to share. So, lock in. The bar's loaded for episode 13, part one with Denny Reinhart. Hit the intro music.
Welcome to the platform where the stories weigh a ton. Squat, bench, dead, we rise as one. Michigan's lifters, this is our home. Turn it up, feel that foam. This is the platform.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bar is loaded, and we're back for another episode of The Platform, your Michigan High School Powerlifting Association podcast. My name is Chris Whitaker. As always, I am here with my co-host, our executive director of the Michigan High School Powerlifting Association, who, if you're watching on video, is wearing one of our brand new Platform t-shirts, available soon to everyone on the MHSPLA store. We are here, and Coach Gillum is going to introduce our guest with a man who needs no introduction, I don't think, around our association that we've heard a lot about, and one of the pioneers of the MHSPLA, Mr. Dennis Reinhart, is here.
Yeah. So
Coach Gillum,
our guest
tell
today,
us more about our guest.
You betcha. Our guest today is a true legend. He's a power lifter himself, and 3 years ago, he set a state record in the USPA for bench press in his weight class and age group. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. He witnessed some early days of the MHSPLA. He was instrumental in steering the Michigan High School Powerlifting Association in the 1990s. He developed a state powerhouse football program and a nationally recognized powerlifting team. Did these two accomplishments go hand in hand? Let's ask him. Welcome, Dennis Reinhart, to the platform. All right, Coach, good to have you with us.
Thank you, guys.
I should have had the sound
You
effect
should have had
queued
those
up, Coach.
applause.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Thank you much.
So we got a bunch of questions for Denny. We're gonna have a lot of fun talking with him and learning from him. So I have the first question here, Coach, and it's what brought you to this sport of powerlifting?
Well, and actually, my senior year of high school, which would have been way back in 1978, we touched weights for the first time. And my head football coach at the time was Bob Hayes, and he introduced us to a guy from Fenton who moved to Montrose. His name was Tim Stiverson, and he was a national power lifter at that time. And we started going down into his basement, lifting, 4 or 5 of us on the football team. And basically, Tim is the one that turned me on to it. And I said that would have been back in 1978, but I didn't start competing until after college and stuff like that. But that's how we really got turned on to it.
Now that Stuyvesant name, like I've met and we talk about it with the guests all the time. I'm from New York, so I'm learning who's who here around the state. But I've met I believe his first name Adam Stuyvesant,
Yeah, that would be one of his sons, yes.
one of
Then
Tim's
there's
sons.
Adam, and then there's an Adam Jr., et cetera, et cetera. So there's several of them, but Tim is the father, and he's the one that really got us in Montrose turned on to it.
That Adam's daughter there is bombing the shot put in discus. Huh?
Oh, and she's not
That-
good. She is tremendous. She's great. I mean, she is what you call great, elite.
yeah, absolutely. Addie, right? Shout
Addison, yeah.
Addison Stuyvesant. Shout out Addie. So you said that you got brought in by Coach Stuyvesant. And how did what was your motive for starting a program at Montrose? That was your first program was at Montrose, always at Montrose?
Yeah, what happened, obviously, once I got out of college and et cetera, I was still lifting, but I wasn't actually competing until I had hooked up with Russ Husted doing my student teaching in '87. And I had never really truly competed. I was always inspired by it, but Russ Husted was a big original powerlifting guy from Mount Morris. And back in the day when the MHSPLA was kind of different than what it is now, but that was kind of back then. And Russ was real big into it, and it worked out great that I did my student teaching under him. And then I got working out with him, and then he got inspired by me, and some of the kids in the class were teasing him that I was stronger than him, and da 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 da. And so it went on like that. So all of a sudden, we started going to powerlifting, actually just bench press meets and lifting then, and it kind of got turned on. And then me and Russ and a few other guys just started going on, started traveling the country, just competing in powerlifting meets. And so in that time frame, then I got to Montrose with Tony Anise, who was the head coach at the time. And we obviously got there. And Montrose was kind of in a down phase of football. And first thing we said, we're weak and we got to get physically strong. And I said, and he was also doing varsity basketball. I said, I get it. I got the weight room all winter and, and stuff like that. We'll take care of it. And we got him in there. And I started with a couple kids, just took him to a powerlifting meet the first year we were there up in Elma, Michigan. I think it was at Burke's gym. I think it was Dave Burke ran the gym back then. And we did a meet there. A couple kids got turned on, and then a couple more. And then Dave Burke calls me and says, I'm not going to run the ADFPA meet anymore. Would you be interested? So then I jumped on it, and we started running ADFPA sanctioned meets, and that's kind of how it grew from there. So we grew from a couple kids to, I don't even know the numbers. And again, it wasn't to build a powerlifting team. We built it for our football program because, obviously in the off season, football is a long time away. So we just would like train for the next meet, then the next meet, then the next meet. And then before you knew it, football season rolled around. And that's how we kind of looked at it. And then that was great because I was now competing and, then in full meets and stuff like that. And that was great. I could work out with the kids and get my training in, they get their training in. And we had it rolling, man. We had a good thing going.
Yeah, yeah, you did. Because I'm from that area, Whitaker, you know that. And I just remember reading the articles in the Flint Journal about the powerlifting program, and their football program too. But they usually had some stories in the sports section in the summer based on their powerlifting teams doing national meets and stuff. So back in the 80s, like you mentioned ADFPA meets, and with Russ, and that's awesome. We'll talk about Russ a little more later, but were all the meets equipped?
Yeah. Back at that time, yeah, everything was equipped. Not everybody, but most people would wear the squat suit. Some would wear bench shirts, some wouldn't, and then the original knee wraps, which you still can go to meets with those stuff today. I think they call them classic, whatever. They got so many different names now. It's unbelievable. But again, that was kind of what it was known. And of course, our kids did it. And then when we started going to the national meets, I mean, if you didn't, have the suits or the knee wraps, I mean, you honestly you couldn't compete.
Yeah.
And after a while, I mean, that's where is actually several years after that, but it got to the point where, we got the best, who had the best equipment, usually were the most successful. And I had an example of our own kids that we could probably get into it later on that convinced me that, to be fair, in high school that we got to push the raw. And then I made a big push for raw at a certain point. And like I said, you could probably go to this a little bit later
Mhm.
on and what's going on. But I mean,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is kind of going from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. So, w- you mentioned the gym. So, were there high schools where meets were taking place? I mean, I believe, I looked up some stuff like, well, Millington was hosting a state meet back then under the MHSPLA moniker. Um, did you guys go to that state meet at all, or did
Well,
you?
what really was going on in the early through the mid '80s with Russ Husted and Tim Furno and them, they did and Tim called to meet the MHSPLA, which it is right now,
Yeah.
and they were kind of the big ones in at Millington and Mount Morris and South Line were the main dogs back in that era, and they competed. And when I did my student teaching with Russ, they were still competing with it. And then when, I got to Montrose, um, we I was more pushing our kids to try to compete nationally
Mhm.
and to go. And that's how we started running the ADFPA, which is the American Drug Free Powerlifting Association. It's no longer really an organization. It busted off into certain ones, but that was the big one back in the day that truly drug tested. And so
Mhm.
we pushed to go to those national meets, and so that's why I was running the ADFPA state meets in Michigan. And like I said, the first one we went to, I think it was like '87 with Dave Burke, and I think from '88 on, I ran them up until gee whiz, I don't even remember the
Yeah.
last one it was. Like I said, I was trying to get in up on top of the trophies and see what year we stopped doing
Sure.
those meet. But that's kind of where we kind of got together, the one kind of reformed the MHSPLA because at one point our ADFPA meet started growing and growing and growing and growing, and then the MHSLPA started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so at some point, I think in the early '90s, '92, '93 range, we had a meeting together and was kind of like, let's kind of form, do one, instead of having a ADFPA one and this one. And it was like, yeah, we're for it, but I mean, also if we're going to do it, we got to drug test it. It's only fair to drug test it. And so when we did sort of combine it. Drug testing was a part of it, just like it was to be a sanctioned meet. You obviously in the ADFPA, you had to drug test 10% of your lifters, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we first formed the MHSLPA for the state meets, we still kept the drug testing in up until a certain time. And I'm not really sure when that kind of got pushed away and I was on the board. And that's kind of where at that time I was on the board and I kind of kept pushing, we got to start drug testing again. And it kind of, really didn't happen. And so that's kind of where I kind of, you know, slowly stepped back from it.
Sure, I understand. Yeah, I mean that's pretty interesting to hear that. And so the MHSPLA, even though it was kind of separate from what you were doing, they were also equipped, correct?
They were fully equipped and then we all stayed fully equipped until I guess I'll get the story right now. We were down at a qualifier. We used to set it up. We had to do regional qualifiers like you do now. And
Mhm.
Denny Hopkins down at Linden was running one. And I had two of my own kids in there. And there was one kid who was, they both were strong. But the one kid was quite wealthy and he had a top of the line bench shirt. And, I had another kid who was bench and I was right by him. And he did I don't know, like a 325, 330 bench and he struggled with it, but got it. And I, I left and went to help another kid and I came back and I said, "What are you going?" I think don't quote me on the numbers, but it was something like 390. And I said, "Are you?" And I guess that's where one of those bombs came out. Stupid. There's no way in the world you're going to get it. I said, "Why would you take such a jump?" He goes, "I'm wearing, Mark's shirt." I said, "I don't care what shirt you got on. You are not going to get it. You can't ain't that much of a difference." And anyways, he puts the shirt on and boom, he blows it out of the water like, oh my God, there's just no way. And of course, that shirt at the time, I think that time was like a $300 bench shirt.
Yeah.
And I just said, no, this ain't right. This ain't right, because you got the funds and this kid doesn't. It ain't fair. So right then there, it was two of my own kids just said, we got to go raw. We've got to go raw. And then if these kids want to start going nationally again, that's fine. You can do that
Mhm.
stuff, but for this thing, I mean, yes, you got to be strong, but I mean, that was helping too much. I'm sorry. And
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
for
and
sure.
it did, and, to this day, and that's where we really started pushing the raw, and then I think it was in '07, they had to meet over at Muskegon High, is the first year we went raw, and we had a equip division on a Friday night and then a raw division on Saturday, and that's how we did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about that later because I remember certain specific things that happened at the previous year's state meet at Plainwell, so that we kind of voted to go raw
Oh,
and
yeah.
get rid of things. So, but yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. That's pretty good information.
So we talked a little bit about how, kind of in the 80s, Millington and Mount Morris were kind of the top dogs. You guys were active from with a Montrose team at that time. How many different schools would you say were involved back then?
Oh, wow. Man, you're really drawing back at me. I remember, well, okay, when we started getting the ADFPA going, the meets I was having there with the sanctioned ones, God, it was Montrose, Goodrich, Bendel, Linden, DeWitt, were some of the first ones. Obviously, Millington was involved, but more in the MHSPLA. West Side to State, I think Bill Holdsworth was with some people now. Back in the day, Matt Prisk was people down from Traverse City, but each year they just kept growing and growing and growing is what it really started out. But that was like the main. I mean, I think my first ADFPA meet I ran, I think maybe I had 120 lifters. The first one, which would have been 1988. I think it was like 120, and then like the last ADFPA meet, I think right around 94, I think is when 93 was the last teenage ADFPA meet I ran, or state meet in 93. Then we went to the MHPLA, I think in 94. I think the last one in 93, I think I had roughly 300, 350 to 400 right in that range at the state meet.
Wow, that's
Oh,
pretty
okay.
awesome. How many platforms were you guys running then?
Well, we started out, when I think the first meet we did, we ran 2, then we went to 3, and then we ended up, and we originally started out using hydraulic powerlifting mats from Bill Stiff out of Fenton with Tim.
Yeah, I was going to
They
talk
worked
to you.
great. We had
Yeah.
those ones, those big ones. They had hydraulic in and out, up and down and stuff. But when they got stuck, boy, they were tough to move. And then, what was his name? Not Bill Stiff. He was from Bendel. Their industrial arts teacher. He made 6 squat racks with jack stands.
Yep, I remember
And
those.
he made 3 of them for Bendel and 3 of them for us. And then we just, we'd share them. So then we had the 6, and then we just so then with 6 platforms, and eventually it went more and more and just, kept growing from there. But for the longest time, we only had the 6 platforms with those old jack stand jacks we had, and they're still floating out there anyways. Eventually there became 12 of them. And then we used to share them back and forth. And that one year, somebody in the west side of the state took 6 of them and never returned them. And then, we're missing 6 of them for a while. Then all of a sudden they were painted a different color. And I was at one of the meets. I said, wait a minute. They started chipping off. And I said, these are, whatever. So kind of went like that. So there are still 12 of those around somewhere.
Yeah, I remember them being like blue
They were
and
blue.
red.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then all
Whoever
of a
took them
sudden
last.
they ended up green one year or something.
Yep.
I'm like,
Whoever took them last would end up changing their color and thinking nobody would notice. I'm like, come on,
they're
oh
pretty
yeah.
unique. Yeah,
Yep.
those were pretty sweet. A lot easier. You didn't have to undo the weight, Coach Whitaker, on the bar to raise them lower because they were jack stands, so you could raise them lower that way.
Yep. And
Um,
they did good. They were heavy duty. They were some big,
Yeah.
sturdy racks.
Yeah, they were pretty sweet. So each upright was independent from one another.
Mhm.
So that had a wide base. It was pretty nice. And then we brought in like regular bench presses to bench
Yep.
on. So
Mhm.
it wasn't like a utility bench brought out to the rack. So yeah, those were good old days.
Yep.
So
Sweet.
like the competition style rack that you see now in like a USAPL meet, you guys basically built that.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, within that time, coach, I mean, I'm sure most of the participants were boys, but what was the participation for girls like back then?
Well, again, we had girls competing. I think our first girls, few of them started competing right around '89. So I was looking at some of the trophies up there, and we got pictures of the girls in that. And again, it was small, and it gradually kept growing and growing and growing. And obviously nowhere near the amount of participants now, but I mean it grew. And if to give you exactly a figurehead right now, I couldn't really tell you.
Sure.
I would have to pull out an old sheet, which is somewhere in my filing cabinet, which I do. I do have the results of a lot of our old meets in the filing cabinets. I just didn't be able to pull them out, but
Yeah.
they're in there.
No, for sure. So I've been doing a lot of research on the MHSPLA. I told you that when I talked to you previously. In my research, you told me you about certain schools, and you had mentioned Swartz Creek, but you couldn't remember the guy's name.
Lloyd
And so,
Kuhn.
then I found the name. So Lloyd Kuhn from
Yep.
Swartz Creek was massively successful with his
Yes.
women's powerlifting team um, in the 80s. Did you know him? Did,
Yes. Lloyd
okay.
at the time, he was the ADFPA state chairman.
Okay.
And so anytime I had to go through one of I sanctioned meets, I had to go through Lloyd to get it signed off by him. And then he would come to the meets as a sanctioned person to make sure we were drug testing and all that sort of stuff. And he still would run meets and that, and our kids would go there. And sometimes, where time of year it was, he would run qualifiers just to get kids able to till they could go to nationals, and he run qualifying meets and stuff like that. So yeah, I knew Lloyd real well, and Lloyd was a great person, mentor for powerlifting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a ton of detail. I know he was a big power lifter himself.
Yes, he
He's
was.
originally from Flint. I think he's in the Greater Flint Sports Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. And one thing that I learned, like they won 8 straight national championships as women's team from '83 through '90. I believe that was through the USPA, and I don't know if that's because it was, they had meets specifically for teenagers in high school. But I found that kind of interesting that USPA, and that's what you lived in now, right? Is the
Yeah, the
USPA?
USPA. Yep, yep.
Okay.
And
So,
actually Adam Stuyvesant is the state chairman of Michigan now for the USPA.
okay,
Mhm.
great. And you guys, getting sidetracked a little bit, but you guys are hosting a USPA meet soon, right?
Yeah, actually, people still can enter it. I think the deadline it closes tomorrow to enter in it. But yeah, we're doing one, or actually, I'm judging it, but Adam's actually running it, and we're running it at our auditorium up there, and just kind of just a dress rehearsal dry run because we want to try in the future run a national and possibly even a world competition there. They're trying to get away from running at small gym venues, getting more like auditoriums like it is. Our auditorium will seat 550 people. It'll be up on an elevated stage and stuff like that. So we're going to do this kind of like as a dry run of it, and then obviously videotape and send it out to the national offices and then say, hey, this is what we got. This is how it would be run. This is what it would look like. And it's a great place to run a national event and then hopefully a world event.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I wish you guys luck with that because that would be pretty cool to have something like that basically come in our backyard for all of our Michigan people. Like that's a huge event to have a national meet, let alone a world meet. That would be awesome. So, what do you remember specifically about Lloyd Kuhn? Was he like you said that he was the state chair and stuff, but like, what was his forte? Did he have an expertise in one area or another? Or?
Um, I just knew Lloyd as just being just a knowledge board, basically like a history book. I mean, he just had so much knowledge, and anything you had any questions, you'd go to Lloyd. Lloyd had the answers and stuff like that. And obviously, he knew the powerlifting. I mean, he obviously was coaching it and competed in it and things like that. So he knew what was going on. But Lloyd was just a great person to have around with all the knowledge and friendly. Everybody just they knew Lloyd. Lloyd walked in; it was kind of like he was a magnet and people would
Yeah,
come up to him, people that had lifted with him, against him, et cetera. 20, 30 years prior, would still go up to him. And, Lloyd was, everybody knew Lloyd.
sure. Well, and I just find it amazing. Like back, you're talking when he was doing this with Swartz Creek, it was late 70s through the 80s.
Oh, yes,
Not
he
like
was.
this, it's not like the sport was super popular. I mean, in a nutshell, being from the Flint area myself, it sounds like a lot of the big time powerlifting movement for the state was occurring in that area and then expanding outwards as time has went on. Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was. People obviously like Lloyd and even Bill Stiff down at Fenton originally, which we got to Stuyvesant into it, and then obviously obviously Tim Fernell was doing it up there at Millington and that, and Russ Husted at Mount Morris, and even I can't remember the guy's name down at South Lyon. They were real big in it at the time. And then we got together, and obviously I got in there at Montrose, and it just seemed to kind of grow from that point.
okay, awesome, Chris.
So you brought up Bill Stiff from Fenton. What else could you tell us about him? I mean, you shared a little bit about him already.
Well, I didn't know Bill real well. He was more, connected with Tim. He was Tim Stuyvesant's coach and stuff. And then obviously Tim introduced me to Bill, and obviously we would borrow his equipment, and I lifted in a couple of the meets that Bill ran. In fact, my first full meet was actually down in Fenton at one of Bill's meets, and actually my first full meet I think was in 1987 was my first full meet, because I was really specializing in the bench press at the time, because I knew my deadlift was way behind just the way I was built, and but then I eventually got into all the full meets and everything like that, and then that's how I knew Bill, but I didn't know him super well.
Okay. I'm learning all these people for the first time, Coach. So
Yeah.
No
you know,
problem at all.
Well, I mean, and I'm trying to think when, Bill's been, passed away for a while now. I think 2021, maybe somewhere around there. But for our listeners, our viewers, you would probably remember him if you've been around because he wore the red tracksuit jacket around the meets,
Yep.
and it had all of his national titles that he won, all his records that he had set, and then it, also listed how many like national champion lifters he had coached because he owned Stiff's Gym in Fenton, Michigan, and that was like, from what I can tell, people from all over the state would come there to talk to him and learn from him because he was a world class lifter himself, and he just happened to live in Fenton, and that's where he had a gym, and it was
Yep.
called Stiff's Gym. So, but those that can remember the older gentleman, a little hunched over, wearing a red tracksuit jacket, and one of the last people I remember him coaching was Crystal Krupp from Fenton High School. She set all kinds of records when my oldest daughter was like in middle school. I think she still might even have a state record for us right now in the 181. She might still have the bench record, or I don't know, or Stuyvesant might have broke it, but she might have a 165 record, I think, because Stuyvesant, I think, was 81 this year. But yeah, he's a pretty good guy. So you talked about Russ Husted before, and you told us that you student taught with him. What kind of guy was he? I mean, I've met him. Whitaker has never met him. So, like, what could you tell us about Russ that stood out? Because he's wrote a lot of books, from what I can understand. You can find him on Amazon and all kinds of stuff.
Russ, if you didn't know him, very intimidating guy, big man, very strong man. Um, and competed obviously full meets and stuff like that. But he's also, back in the day, I'm talking like in the must be late '60s, early '70s. He was in powerlifting and bodybuilding, and he would compete in both venues. And then obviously, eventually, he had severe back injuries and stuff like that. And so then he kind of got out of the powerlifting, but he kept training the people at Mount Morris. And like I said, then he got back into competing at just bench meets when got doing student teaching with him in the winter of '87. But again, he was an intimidating man, and he had the goatee and everything, and he always wore a headband down, brought his hair forward and the headband around him, and just, very big man, massive arms, and just intimidating. And he knew his powerlifting, and he was very strict. I mean, it was his way or the highway, and the way he trained his kids, and they were very disciplined, and they did it the way he wanted, and that's the way it was. And again, there were some tremendously strong Mount Morris powerlifters when Russ was coaching them. I mean, they were some strong kids over there. They were national kids, and they've also won national meets with Russ in that year and everything like that. But one thing with Russ, though, there was always some fighting with administration at Mount Morris, because he wanted to make it a varsity sport at the time, and Mount Morris didn't. So they would bicker back and forth. So then he was coaching, not coaching, but he's a coaching, but unofficially coaching and things like that. And I got in there, in some of it, and so I got to see the inner workings. But he was a great person. He got me obviously doing it. Then I started training strictly with him. We would go and he called it the 6 a.m. Animal Club, and he had a big, t-shirts made out or wife beater, tank tops with his face on it and everything like that. And
Okay.
stuff like that. And then I'd go down to his house and train on Saturday mornings when we started hitting all these national bench meets and stuff like that. So he was a great man.
Yeah. I looked up and I can't remember specific numbers, but he has a lot of, or at one time he had set a lot of records nationally in various weight classes, because he just got to different weight classes because he just kept getting bigger and bulking up. So he was a big dude. Yeah, the bandana.
Yep.
Oh, honestly, for Coach Whitaker, who's a wrestling entertainment guy, I would say he would remind you of the Undertaker when he was the American Badass character.
Oh yeah,
So
right
that's
into the
what
meat.
Russ Houston would remind you of. Yeah. So yeah,
And
great.
he had a motorcycle too.
Yes. Yeah. He was a very knowledgeable guy. Very knowledgeable. Mount Morris used to host a lot of USAPL meets, and some MHSPLA meets every now and then too. So great.
Yeah,
And he ended up going to Powers at the end of his career, right?
Yeah, he ended up getting with John Zinsmaster a little bit and doing some of the power stuff. And yeah, he did. And then
They turned into a pretty strong team in a short period of time.
they did. Yes, they did. Like I said, whoever Russ would coach at, they'd be rock solid if they would listen to him. Russ went to Grand Blanc for a short period, and it didn't go real over there because they would not. I mean, Russ was his way or the highway,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't go his way. So he says adios, and I think that's when he went to Powers.
Okay, gotcha. Good.
Said looking him up quick, said he had the world record in the bench press raw, 555 pounds.
I think
He
he's one of the first guys to ever bench over 500 raw.
No.
is
That
what
one
I've
was
read.
probably the one there. Is that the one that's in like the late 60s?
Yeah.
I can find out when he did it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like around 68 or somewhere around there.
He published books. I got a bunch of stuff. The Husted Power Pack.
Yeah, that's what that would be
That's
on
the
the
sporting club, right? The Power Pack. Yeah. They
Yeah.
had T-shirts made up like you were
Yep.
saying. Yeah.
I still got some of those. In fact, my one son, he has the tank top with the 6 a.m. Animal Club, and then I said another one with the Husted Power Pack.
Nice.
Yeah, I have powerlifting records or bench press records: 198, 220, 242, 275, and super heavyweight. 275 and super heavyweight classes. He broke national records in 1968. His world record bench press in the 242 class at 530 pounds.
Wow.
And he hit a personal best 555 pounds at a body weight of 265.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, wow, crazy.
Yeah, and your kids were arguing on trying to get you guys against each other with the bench press and stuff.
Well, that's when I was doing my, Russ he was kind of working out, in the morning, stuff like that. And I came in as, the fresh out of college, doing my student teaching stuff, whatever. And I had never done his workout. He was notorious. I mean, he's the one that kind of invented the 4 sets of 6, 4 sets of 3 stuff. I had never trained with that, that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, I would just, give him whatever like that. And he said, "You can never do my workout." And I said, "Okay, you tell me what it is and I'll do it." So one day, we did it. He says, "Okay, this is what you're going to do for your sixes. This is what you can do for your threes." And I did it, and I kind of blew it out of the water. And then he just kind of gave me this like eyeball. Then when the school day was done, he pulled me aside and says, he always called me the pup. And he goes, "Pup, I can make you a national champion. You train with me, you'll be a national champion." Then in the meantime, the kids are all teasing, "What's the matter, Mr. Husted? Is the pup stronger than you?" et cetera, and doing all this sort of stuff. So it kind of got him fired up a little bit. So then he started training again. As I said, I started going down to his house and we started training together on Saturday
Nice.
mornings and stuff like that. And eventually we just started going to bench press meets, and we ended
Yeah.
up, starting with one in Grand Rapids. And then we started going around the country. We went to St. Louis, we went to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, we went to Chicago. We'd go all these different places, and we'd pile in his van. There'd be 5, 6, 7 of us go in a van and go to these national meets, and numerous times we were the national champions, and we all set national records, and it was quite the time.
Yeah.
It was good. And there was one time we happened to go out to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania the one year, and we were all coming off injuries and, something here or something there. And we're going over some big bridge somewhere in Pennsylvania. I don't even know. I mean, it's a massive bridge. And, we had all these trophies that are like, there's 3, 4, 5 foot trophies, they're big trophies. And only a couple of us, in fact, I don't even think any of us took first, because I know I had shoulder injury and I was second. I think Russ was second. And I had a young kid with me from my high school. Yeah, and he was like 18 years old, and he was a senior, and it was his first trophy he ever got. And I think he was runner up, and he was proud as a peacock, And we're going down, and Russ says, "If you ain't first, get rid of the trophies." And then the guy next to me said, "Roll your window down." Russ throws his trophy out the window, and you can hear it going ding, ding, ding all the way down off the bridge, and like that. Who's the next? Next, everybody's throwing their trophies off the bridge. And then of course it comes Ron's turn to throw the trophy off, and you could just see
No.
him. He's like ready to cry. And I was like, "Nah, dude, you can keep your trophy." "No, I
Yeah.
can't
No.
keep your trophy." So he throws his out. And so we end up throwing all of our trophies off the bridge here in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's crazy. That's a good story. That's like if you ain't first, you're last
That's what it
mentality.
was. That's what it was. But usually most times we came back with first, but we're not always, but that was a time it didn't happen.
That's a pretty good story on Russ and your whole little crew there. That's cool.
Well, there's some other ones, but there's one I don't think we probably want to say here on this podcast.
Yeah, maybe when we're off the show, you can share.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, hey, we do have the power of editing, Coach. So don't worry about that. So when in the early '90s, you've talked a little bit about stuff that's happened in these years, but in all of our kind of preparations, it's been hard to find much information regarding powerlifting in high school in Michigan. But you were the one that kind of in all of the research kept coming up as one of the most influential people at that time in high school lifting within our state. Um, so how is it that your involvement started and developed as a person of influence for the sport at the high school level specifically? Really, I mean, you kind of talked about you brought it with kids, but how did you become like a person in the state that everybody knew?
I think it started probably when I was competing, because I was competing at the same time I was running these meets, because there was a stretch where I was I think it was 4 years in a row, like 89, 90, 91, 92. I was the ADFPA national bench press champion. And I was also got to competing in full meets. And, I'm embarrassed to say I never was, super elite nationally, just because my deadlift was so god. There's high school kids that are better deadlifters than I was, but I was elite to squatting and benching and stuff like that. I think that's what kind of got people to know me somewhat. And then obviously running the meets. And then, obviously at the time, our kids were, very, very strong. When our kids went to meets, I mean, they would walk in and they would know, they're who they are. I mean, there's the one year at the MHSPLA, I think, where our kids, all the 10 lifters at the time, you had to declare who you're putting points on. It wasn't your 10 best finishers. You had to declare. That was the old rule that they used to be, especially in the ADFPA. And then we first started that in the MHSPLA. And out of the 10 people you could put points on, our kids, won all 10 weight classes. I think that was the meet over at Lowell in, I think it was 98. Because that was the year we won our first state title in football. And that was kind of correlation. Then I had to speak down at the coaches clinic there in Battle Creek at the time. And I was kind of put together a presentation of the powerlifting relating to the football field. And that's kind of how it went across.
Yeah, that you mentioning that. So Coach Whitaker being a strength coach, it was probably one of the first like sessions I recall, but I was a young coach just starting out then. Like there was, it wasn't a football session. It was about strength, which,
Mhm.
tied into football obviously, but it wasn't an X's and O's session. So I remember him doing that, and a few years later, Todd Miller doing that at
Yeah,
the state coaches clinic.
because
So
at that time, that was our 98 state championship team. We ran, we were double tight, split back veer. And our front seven, out of the front seven, 6 of them were over 500-pound squatters, and I had 2 running backs that were both squatting over 500 pounds. So so we were pretty strong. We were at that time, we were 98, so we were class CC. At the time when we won the state title that year. So I mean, we had some very strong, powerful people on that football team. I'll take, even today, as far as strength, that many numbers, doing over 500. I mean, and then we're not talking like 500 high. We're talking about these are all competition depth. They had won the national powerlifting meet that year. That team did, and because as we used to go to all the national meets, I mean, we had run nationals several years in a row or runner up several years in a row. So these kids were all national lifters.
hmm,
Strong.
that's pretty awesome.
Strength is never a weakness.
No.
Crazy enough, coach, right? If you were one of the first people to present on strength at the football coaches clinic,
Yeah, in my career at least. So
I just got to do that this past year. Like,
yeah,
that's crazy that you to get to talk to one of the first guys to get to
yeah,
do that. So
yeah. I mean, almost 30 years ago we did that, and
yeah,
you get to do it. So there's something you two have in common.
yeah.
So you mentioned earlier the ADFPA, and for our listeners, that
Yep.
is what the USAPL, it turned into the USAPL, the ADFPA. So, what percentage of lifters had to be drug tested at those meets that you were hosting?
10%.
Is it 10% of them? So
10% of
when
the
you
lifters.
said your last one that you hosted as an ADFPA had over like 300 lifters, man, that can be pretty expensive
Well,
to
I
test it.
mean, it is, but also you're making quite a bit of money on it.
Sure.
Now I honestly I don't remember what our drug tests were at the time. Um, I know they were under $100. In
Okay.
fact, I had talked to Big Adam, Stiverson, what, because obviously with the USPL, like right now, what drug testing is. And I said to this, I mean, they're right now in the USPL. I can look it up real quick. Like, um, what does he say here? 150 per drug test.
Okay.
What is
Okay.
nowadays. So I'm assuming that many years ago, hell, it might have been $75, maybe less than that. I mean, it wasn't a tremendous
Yeah.
amount.
But it's still, I mean, that's a cost, and
It
then
is. It
it's like
is.
you're not testing a handful of people. You're
Well, if you gotta
testing
meet
three
that big,
dozen
yes,
people.
yes, yes, yes. But even to keep it going, I mean, obviously, you're talking nationally, that's different. But I even think, locally or even, state, if it's not a sanctioned or by an organization, just testing a few
Yeah.
will keep it, more straight or more honest. Is
Yeah.
some people going to get through? Yeah, people get through right now with the drug testing because again, if you're only testing 10%, people take the chance, and you know what happens. I mean,
Sure.
cheating's going to take place in everything, but I think it's it helps keep some of the people honest.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that the thing I find interesting is like, you were hosting this because you wanted your kids to be able to qualify for nationals, right?
Yep.
That's why you were doing it. Okay. So then the transition into the MHSPLA, so drug testing still taking place, right? As you're going through stuff. So would you say those meets were still sanctioned by the ADFPA, even though
No,
it's
no. When
okay.
we basically we ended up we cover the part where we had a meeting in Lansing and try to bring the organizations together.
Yeah, you briefly talked about it. You can
Okay.
give us more details if you have them.
Well, it was just like I said in the early '90s. There, Tim and them and Tim Fernal up there in Millington, and called us because we were the main ones running the ADFPA stuff. Wanted to kind of unite the things and do it together, and so we kind of talked about it and did some things, and eventually it did all come together. I think '94 might have been the first time it was a MHSPLA. At least that's the trophies that I could see
Yeah, yeah,
that are in my weight room. I have one that says MHSPLA first place in '94, and then I have another one that says ADFPA teen or state championship ADFPA, which was '93. So I'm figuring, okay, the transition must have been right there in '94.
yeah,
Is where we kind of then formed that, and then we still did the national meets, but then we'd run a qualifier and just say this is a ADFPA qualifying meet just for those that wanted to truly qualify. Since we
yeah,
started doing the MHSPLA, because not everybody wanted to compete nationally, and then I think that at that time, you know, like Plainwell and them were then competing, and they were going to national meets, and people were going different organizations, and each organization has different qualifiers and different sanction cards and such. And so we were doing it. I think our last year of actually competing nationally, I think was roughly 2000, just because it got to the point where, I mean, again, we're not the highest social economic area, and it was getting so costly, again, competing, buying the cards and the entry fees, and
yeah,
then the suits, the knee wraps, the bench, all the stuff you needed, and then making the trip. I mean, when we went nationally, my gosh, we went to Port Charlotte, Florida, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, St. Louis, Missouri, Fort Hood, Texas, Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Louis, Chicago. We went one somewhere in Louisiana. We went to all those different places, and
yeah.
it's expensive. And Nebraska, we
Oh
went
yeah.
out to.
Oh
So,
yeah. Omaha would be
yep,
a
yep,
very popular stop back in the day,
yep.
especially for teenage competitions. Curious, like with the transition as you went, and you said, some of your kids weren't going to compete nationally. Um, did you have a different strategy with some of those kids? Like, did they not do very many high school meets because they were training nationally? Was there ever years that there was a conflict? Because when we were talking to Todd Miller, there was one year state meets at Goodrich, the national meets the same weekend. He sent his half of his kids to nationals, the other half went to the MHSPLA state meet.
Well, what we always did when we were competing nationally, we would go to whatever meet was the latest in the year.
Okay.
So we tried to get the ones, if it was in late May, June, we would try to hit that just so the kids, again, we were training for football, and it was like you lift to a meet, then you lift for the next meet, then the next meet. So we were doing this, and we weren't even thinking football. We're thinking train for the nationals. And that's why some of our national titles that we had, some of them were high school nationals and some of them were teenage, depending on which was run where. So, I mean, I know the one we ran, it was a Memorial Weekend. And I know the one we won in Fort Hood, Texas, was like June 21st of '98. And I think that was a teenage and junior national, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Actually, it was because I got the ones we were national titles in written down, and that was in teenage one, and then the other ones were high school. It just it varied. We tried to go the latest one we could, so we didn't have to conflict, and also miss as much school as we could because that also it's also time.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I mean, you got anything you wanted to ask regarding that, Coach Whitaker? Because to me, it sounds like powerlifting wasn't just the winter season for you guys because you were training for football, but you were trying to find whatever meet you could to get as close to the start of like summer so that those kids are getting ready and getting as strong as they can to lead right into summer workouts and right into the season.
That's exactly was our motto. That's how we tried to do it.
Yeah, so the MHSPLA season was just kind of part of the process. like
Exactly.
maybe a third of it.
Yep.
Okay, interesting.
Well, I mean, and we see people doing that, still today. Like Ron Roberts just took one of his guys and a girl down to the world meet, like way after our season. So
Yeah,
it's we still see people that want to go and compete at that next level, and we talk about all the time. Like, I think what we want to do as the MHSPLA now is be that gateway that allows the kids to experience the sport and then go on to those bigger levels if that's what they desire from it.
yeah.
So, I think the next one is you, Gillum. If you want me to, the question 10 there,
Okay,
because
gotcha.
we already talked about
Yeah,
the
we did
drug
cover
testing
that
and
one.
all that.
You're right. All right. So, who are the board members? You said you transitioned into MHSPLA in '94. Who are some of the guys, in addition to yourself, that kind of were trying to get things organized?
Not 100% sure in the early stages. I know one, and I don't think he even classified himself as a board member, though, was John Zinsmaster. And he was the
Okay.
powers guy and he was the lawyer. And we met in his office to set up basically rules and regulations, especially this whole situation with drug testing, as far as legalities. And he says they signed a waiver, the parents signed a waiver, your butts are covered. You've got nothing to worry about, you know.
And that's
And
the
that was the
waiver
biggest.
that's still in our stuff today.
Exactly. And those were the original stuff that we did in John's office. I think at that time, I think it was obviously John was in there, but he wasn't classified as a board member. I think it was obviously Brian Lemons, myself, and from there, I even Brian, he wasn't 100% sure. I think at that time we only had like four of us,
Right.
and then we kind of started kind of adding more. And then I know for a while there, I know I'm not sure when Eric Jennings came aboard because Eric was there and Mike Holes came aboard, and then Todd Miller there. But I know at one point Noel Dean was real big with it. And then when Bendel was very strong and competed against us, head to head in national events. Then Noel left and went over to Lowell and got it going over there. And then Jeff Setsky took over for Noel at Bendel for a few years. And then he moved on to Fenton. And then so it was kind of like that. And that's kind of how it grew. And eventually Bruce Edwards from Goodrich was a part of it. And some of the other guys that were involved, but I don't think they were on board, but they were so big part of it would have been big Kevin Langs or the older Kevin Langs down at
Yeah.
Climax Scott. And, Rob Zimmerman was a part of it for a while down there at DeWitt. And so there was a lot of different people that were a part of it, but the original board, I mean, the only ones I can, even Lemon said, geez, Danny, I think it was you and me, but I know there was a couple other ones, but honestly, I'm not really positive how it was.
And was Brian, was that one like, because he's a Linden guy, so was he still associated with Linden at that time? Or
He was
was he at
actually
Whitmore Lake?
he was down at Whitmore Lake then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, because tracking back records, Coach Whitaker, we talked to Coach Miller, and, Plainwell women were like 8 straight state titles. And then Whitmore Lake took over and won like
Yep.
4 or 5 straight. And so that was Lemons being there, and they hosted a state meet. That was probably 2014. I remember them hosting a state meet because my daughter would have been an 8th grader that year. So that was the state meet at Whitmore Lake. Their school was kind of brand new that they had built. So yeah, that's cool. We'll have to probably get with Lemons at some point in time. Also, yeah, it's funny how all the people that were so integral in that time period, and hardly anyone's around anymore. But then you start looking, it's like, well, it's been quite a while. Everybody steps away at some point in time. But yeah, that's cool.
I'm going to see Lemons week 1 of the football season.
Oh, you guys open with them? Nice.
Yeah, we opened with them last year there, and now they come to us this year.
Nice.
I didn't get to talk to him last year, but I'll make sure to catch him this year.
He's got a nice running back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, last year went our way very well for us there. So it was a really cool way for us to open up against
Yeah,
a
it probably built your
full bag
guys'
caliber.
confidence. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you guys ended up in the state finals, so that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. No, and like all these names keep coming up, like Noel Dean's at Chelsea now. So when Todd was talking about him, like I just know him as the head football coach at Chelsea and that he was at Lowell before he went to Chelsea. So now
Yeah.
when I see them and when we play these teams, can make the powerlifting connection. So it's
Yeah,
pretty
for
cool.
sure.
It's pretty cool. Again, this has been very educational for me. Talking with you, Denny, and talking with Coach Miller. Um, that was helping me learn who's who around the state. In your time, right, you've had so many great powerlifters at Montrose. Um, Many have set and still have set national records. Can you tell us a few of those people and tell us a little bit about them? Your national record holders and
Oh,
state record
geez.
holders.
I
Sorry.
honestly, the national, I don't even know who had, I haven't stayed on top of the records, because obviously when we were in the ADFPA, we had a lot of them. And I don't even know if those records are anywhere to be found anymore. And when you
Right.
change organizations and all that, just like when, on the MHSPLA, there was a ton of them had records until we went to the raw, so then
Mhm.
the equipped ones then were kind of pushed to the side. We kept track of both of them for a while. Now we just got the raw ones, and so I don't know. I just know we had some tremendously strong people. I mean, just we had I don't know. We had Corey Lake, who was 155 at that time. He was 155. He's pulling what was it, a 605 deadlift back in that time, which was awesome. We had Martin Zielinski at 242, I think weight class. He did a 420 bench. But again, that was one of the guys that trying to turn me off on the equipment, you know,
Mhm.
because then there's other buddy did something else, but we had some. And then we got, I don't want to toot a horn, but like my son, has still a lot of the squat records. And he was a legit squatter and even has records to this day, in men's divisions and stuff like that. He'll train for a while and cut them off and stuff like that. So we have a lot of kids with it, but I mean, we also, at times we would also kind of get away from, we'd be like a big push to get it into the lifting. And then we'd get away because at times a lot of our kids then would say, I'm a power lifter. And I'm
Mhm.
like, "No, you're not. You're a football player." "No, I'm a power lifter." "No, you're not." And so then we're kind of fighting what are we actually trying to do here? So then I'd kind of pull the reins back and step away, and I'm just like, "Okay, all right, go power lift, whatever." But, so stuff like that. So it would kind of go up and down with that with us. And so like that. But still, we've had a lot of strong kids over the years, because like going back to those things, I think we won like 6 national titles, and then like 5 times as runner up and over the years. But I said we haven't competed nationally as a team since 2000. I mean, that's a long time. And part of it was, obviously the cost factor and then, basically the burnout factor of me, trying to do all the fundraising and this and that. And then it was the point if you're just, training, I'm good. We're good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it is.
Well, the ADFPA at that time, there was no raw division, right? It was all
No,
equipped.
no, it was all equipped. Yep, all
Yeah, and
equipped.
so, yeah, the equipment alone is expensive. I just remember, like, seeing a lot of your kids back in those days and Mr. Stiverson being at meets and, like, you guys had the Inzer gear. You had all the top-notch stuff, you know?
Oh, but
Eh,
but I'll tell you what, though, a lot of it would be, hand-me-downs. Some kid bought it, and
sure.
we kept it, and 5 years later, that same squat suit or same bench shirt still being used. May not
Yeah.
have much flexibility in it, but it was still being used.
Well,
You
yeah,
know, that
because they're too expensive to keep
Oh, they were.
buying, you know?
They were. In fact, up in my cage in my weight room, I still got some of the stuff. They go, "Well, what's a squat suit?" So I'll pull one out. This is what it is. Stuff like that.
Nice.
"What's a bench shirt?" "This is a bench shirt." Wow, just stuff like
Nice.
that.
Yeah, for sure. No, and it's interesting. I mean, we talked to Todd about it. It's like there's an art to putting on that equipment because if you put it on wrong, it really doesn't benefit you.
Yeah, you
So
get out
you
of the
got to
groove.
know how to put it on, or it is a waste. You wasted your money, you wasted your energy because if you don't put that bench shirt on just right, it's not going to help you like you think it would.
It's
So
like some of the kids will go by when, "Oh, I'm gonna be able to do this now." Well, you also gotta have some strength first, This ain't like the magic all of a sudden you're gonna put 100 pounds on your bench. I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
You're a 125-pound bencher. You think you're gonna do 225 overnight? No. Bench
Right.
ain't gonna give you that.
yeah. Well, and I think I've never done it
So
myself, but it's like I heard somebody say it. It's more of like the equipment became a skill that you then needed to acquire on top of the lifting, right? Lifting raw and that technique, then the skill that goes into utilizing the equipment.
Some of the equipment, I mean, my lord. I mean, judging now the USPA and some of these meets, some of the stuff they wear, my gosh, I don't know how they do it. And now when I was competing and when our kids did, we just did the original blast shirt, the $36 shirt. But then at that time, there was even shirts that were $250 to $300. Like, no way, they putting that much into it. But obviously, with the raw makes it a lot better. And but you know, times are different.
yeah, and I've watched people with bench with the bench shirts, and like some of them are so the tension in them, like you have to have a certain amount of weight on the bar in order
Ouch.
for it to get to your chest.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
Yeah.
if you think you're going to put on a bench shirt and do warm-up sets, the weight on the bar ain't enough for you to touch your chest because the tension in there is so great. Because I watched a lot of guys at Flint Barbell who were competing in the equipped and stuff. Well, Bruce Edwards being one of those guys, and those guys knew how to wear those things, and they would train with the what you call the slingshot. You know what that is?
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure Denny you do, but it's interesting. But so going back to the equipment, 2006 state meet is at Plainwell. In between the one of the meets, because back then there was a Friday night meet and a Saturday meet. So I remember having a meeting, all the coaches in a classroom, and everybody going, "We got to get rid of the equipped lifters," because it got to the point where like there was equipped lifters still, but more of them were raw because not everybody could afford it. And we just talked about, let's make this more affordable. You're forcing people to kind of do that. But so a bunch of us in a classroom, I remember pretty much every coach in there, I'm sure not everybody. I think Russ might have been upset, to be honest, and Todd maybe at the time, but, because they're dominating with equipped lifting. But we decided we're going totally raw in the MHSPLA the following year. And you mentioned that we still let some kids lift equipped that next year, but they were kind of their own different meet,
Yep.
because, you know, people still needed to like, you know, compete like that because that's what their schools are doing. So, um, what, what were your thoughts at the time when they decided to do that? You said there was a push from your own kids, but you personally, was it a relief to go raw? Was it
Uh,
didn't
I
care?
I wanted it to go raw. I wanted it to go raw just for the fact, the cost of everything. Because obviously we're getting to that time where, especially being where we're from, just the cost of things, and then we were gonna hit economic times at that time. General Motors was, having hard times and layoffs and this and that, and just trying to keep it, costly so the kids could afford to do it. And I think even at that time, I think we still even had, $10 a meet, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
you know,
probably.
and, just trying to keep it affordable. And then if the kids truly wanted to compete, then you would go find a qualifying meet and, to do it. And then by that time, we weren't really pushing, the national meets or anything like that. Other people were, and the meets were still out there,
Mm.
and so I mean, I was pushing for raw just for the fact that those two kids of my own that I saw. I said, no, I mean, we got to change.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can relate watching kids warm up. I remember one of my kids. We were always raw. We didn't have equipment and stuff. And one of my kids was a pretty good bench presser. I mean, in the 155 weight class, I mean, he could pause bench about 325, and it's like pretty damn strong for a high school kid. And, you know, and the guy he's competing against, like, he's like, oh, I can beat him. And then that kid's struggling with warm-up weights, and my kid's doing really well. And then that sucker puts on a bench shirt, and he beats my kid by like 30 pounds in the bench. And it's like, man, if he were raw, we'd probably have a 20-pound lead on this kid. Now instead we're trailing by 20, you know? So it was kind of a little frustrating, but you know, I thought it was a good move. I mean, myself, and obviously that's where we're at now.
That's all we got for part one, folks, with Denny Reinhart. Make sure you tune back in on Thursday of this week for part two of our podcast with Coach Denny Reinhart from Montrose High School.
Bars chalked up, clocks counting down. Another early morning in a small town gym right now. Steel on sleeves, heart in your hands. Every rep, every meet, building Michigan's strongest plans. Welcome to the platform, where the stories weigh a ton. Squat, bench, dead, we rise as one. Michigan's lifters, this is our home. Turn it up, feel that foam. This is the platform. Bus rides, late nights, singles in the duffel bag. White lights, red lights, every call, every flag. From the first warm up to that last grind set. We talk chalk, talk nerves, talk the best you haven't met yet. Welcome to the platform, where the stories weigh a ton. Squat, bench, dead, we rise as one. Michigan's lifters, this is our home. Turn it up, feel that foam. This is the platform. From the UP down to the lakeshore, every rock's a little more war. But you're never walking in alone. You've got a crew in your head for. Welcome to the